So in this video I'm going through a bodyweight routine that you can do at home or in the mountains with absolutely no equipment. It works all the body, so we're hitting upper body, lower body and core, all with these 6 basic movements. I'm going to go through 2 rounds. The first round will be an easy round for beginners, and the second round is going to be a little bit more difficult for those of you who are a little more advanced. All of these exercises will help you become a stronger and fitter hiker and climber. Let's get into it. Now I'm just going to roll my arms around a little bit here and get moving, so if you want to, you can follow along with me, or you can do your own warm-up before getting into this session. The thing that I love about bodyweight training is that as a coach, I'm able to make these movements as difficult for me as it is for a beginner to start doing them. And that's because the more that you train like this, the more knowledge you gain of your body and the more you're able to realize weaknesses, and believe it or not, that's a really good thing. It allows you to work on them. So this is a process of really redesigning the way that your body moves. And that's great because you can only achieve your full potential when you can move freely and have control over your body. So if at any time during this session you find that the move is too easy, then that's a good signal for you to focus more on engaging perhaps the less obvious muscles that support the whole movement. Now I'm going to get into my first movement here, which is table rocks. Now you're probably thinking, what has this got to do with hiking? Well, we don't want you walking around in the mountains all hunched over and tight like you've been sitting at a desk your whole life. We want you standing tall and strong and taking in those big deep breaths of fresh mountain air. So this is about undoing that desk posture. So full hip extension and shoulder extension as well. If you're finding this difficult, then you can actually just sit in that bottom position and just get more comfortable supporting your upper body with your shoulders extended. And over time you might be able to move a little bit further. You might not be able to get your hips up in line with your knees and shoulders like I am, but that's a good reason to start doing this movement. Over time you'll be able to free that up. I'm just having a 10-second pause here where I'm really focusing on squeezing all the muscles that are involved in this movement, and that's a great way to solidify the activation of the muscles that we're using in these movements. And we're going to do an isometric pause after each movement in this session. We're going to get into our next move now, which is the quadruped hover. So what we're doing here is we're strengthening all these upper back muscles that help support you carrying your backpack. So if you're finding this difficult, you can perform it for a shorter amount of time and lean forward less, or even start with your knees on the ground. So we want to be nice and round through the back like that, where I'm pushing my shoulder blades away, I'm pushing my hands down into the ground as much as possible and getting that nice round back posture. At the same time, we want to engage the core, squeeze your glutes, and if you're finding that your wrists are hurting in this position, then I would recommend checking out my wrist preparation sequence. I'll link it up in the top right hand corner there. So doing some preparation and strengthening the wrists really enables you to work more on bodyweight movements. Our next move is a standard of almost every training program, and that's the squat. Such an important move, but also very, very complex. The thing we want to focus on here is keeping your heels on the ground, keeping your back upright and straight, and if you need to, you can boost your heels with just a couple of rocks or whatever you've got lying around. You can use books or magazines, and slowly over time you'll be able to eliminate those and get down with your heels on the ground. But until then, keep your squat boosted and follow along with me in this set of 8 squats. So we want to go nice and slow, reaching forward to counterbalance a little bit with the upper body, breathing in on the way down and a powerful out breath on the way back up. Take an isometric pause, sitting at the bottom of your squat for 5 or 10 seconds, trying to get nice and comfortable there. Stand back up, stretch it out, breathe in that fresh mountain air. We're going to have a little rest and check out the view before we get into the next movement. You guys are doing great. Keep following along with me here. And we're going to get into knee push-ups. Now, this is obviously a super basic exercise, but again, I'm going to try and make it as difficult for me as possible by rounding my back at the end of each rep. And you'll notice where my hands are. My hands are in line with my ribs and they're nice and close to my body. We really want to engage the chest here as much as possible, but also focus on that rounding of the back at the end of each rep. And that's really supporting the rest of these movements to build that pack carrying strength so that you're able to throw on a little bit more weight. And if you're going independently into the mountains on your own without a guide, you're going to have to carry a lot more. So strengthening the structure of your back goes a long way to helping you be a little bit more independent in the mountains. We're going to hold that push-up position at the bottom for about 10 seconds and really solidify our strength in that lower position. Squeezing the glutes, squeezing the core, squeezing the quads. Then we're going to jump up, stretch it out, prepare for our next move. Now, one of my clients who recently did the Tour de Mont Blanc told me about a guy who'd been training so hard, doing hundreds of squats and lunges every day right up until the day before the trek, that he was so toasted that he couldn't even complete the first day. He actually had to put off the whole trip. So don't make those mistakes. Stick with me. You're going to learn a whole lot more about how to build your body from the ground up. We're going to get into some lunges soon, but we're going to do them right. We're going to be doing them with focus, and we are going to be scooping our hips and using posterior pelvic tilt in this robot lunge. So as you can see, I'm stepping back there. I'm really leaning back, but keeping my core engaged. So what you want to do here is squeeze your glutes to protect your lower back, and you'll notice that you get quite a bit of a stretch in the hip flexors and the psoas. So the front of the hip there is going to be getting an active stretch or a dynamic stretch whilst we're actually doing this movement. So we're getting the benefit of the stretch whilst also getting the strength benefit of doing the actual lunge. So it's a double whammy. We're getting benefits on both sides of the spectrum, learning to move better and getting stronger at the same time. We're going to hold an isometric pause, which is pretty tough in that low position. So we've got that knee hovering just above the ground, and then we'll swap to the other side, and that really engages all of the muscular structure around the hips and the legs. And that's what we want to do. We want to be comfortable in those tricky positions, and that really helps us to be injury proof when we're out in the mountains, because your body is comfortable in those tricky positions where you'd usually injure yourself if you fell into. We're going to get into the final move of our first circuit, and this is a bird dog. So this is all about stabilizing your mechanical axis. If you think about the way that you walk or hike, it's contralateral. So your right arm's moving with your left leg and vice versa. And that's exactly what we're doing here with the bird dog. We want to push away with that right hand, really reach forward, and at the same time pushing away with the left, squeezing the glute. Now, while all this is happening, you want to be engaging your core and engaging the muscular structure around the hips and the shoulders so that we can mitigate any rotation. This is about building stability. So we want to focus on keeping the upper body as stable as possible whilst you're moving your distal limbs. So really try and lock in that upper body from the shoulders through to the hips. Try and keep it as stable as possible whilst you're moving nice and slow and under control. Again, we take an isometric hold for about 5 or 10 seconds at the end of each movement on each side. And we can shake it out. And that's our first round done. So for you guys who are beginners, you might want to try this second round. But if not, you just go back to the easier progression that we did earlier. Now, our first movement here is a bridge to L-sit. So this is a little more difficult than the table rocks. And the reason why is because I've got to support almost my whole entire body weight with my hands directly under my shoulders. So if you're not able to get your butt through your hands like that, then you can boost your hands up with a yoga block or some books or something. But what we're training there is shoulder depression. So we are increasing the range of motion of the way that the shoulder can move, and we're also strengthening that range of motion. So that goes a long way to injury prevention, also just building more functional strength and being able to use more of your body. We'll hold 10 seconds in each position, so that lower position as well as the upper body position here. So squeezing the glutes, lifting the hips as much as possible, getting that core engaged and the quads engaged before we roll over into the second move. Let me know if you guys are following along. Tell me how you're doing. We're going to take a little rest here and soak in the view of the mountain. What more motivation do you need than that? Check that out. Looking so beautiful this morning. We're going to get into our next movement here, which is the quadruped hover again, but we're going to change it slightly to make it a little more difficult. So you can see here that I flip my feet over. I'm working on the top side of my feet, and that means that almost all of my body weight now is going to be forced into my upper back. So again, you can probably see there's a bit of a theme here, in that I'm keeping my back nice and round and I'm pushing my scapula away, and that is really helping us build the muscular structure of the whole back. So the lats, the rhomboids, all the muscles that stabilize the shoulder. We're getting to strengthening those without going to the gym, without doing rows, without going anywhere near a set of weights. We're getting stronger, and it's all through this bodyweight training. These simple movements, but they do require a little more concentration and a little more mental effort than just pushing a weight around in the gym. You can see here that I'm kind of sitting back into my squat between each move, taking a couple of seconds rest before going into the next rep. Take a little stretch out after that set before we go into our next lower body move. You can see that I'm swapping between upper and lower body, and that allows me to rest the lower body while I'm training the upper body and vice versa. And it means that we're keeping up a pretty steady heart rate, nothing extreme, but we're keeping that heart rate up and just constantly moving. And that's pretty similar to the way that our cardiovascular system is working over a long day of hiking or a steady incline of climbing. Our next move here is the side-to-side squat. So here we're really working on the deeper ranges of motion in the squat, and we're learning how to demonstrate control as we move from left to right, staying nice and low to the ground. If you don't have that depth in the squat yet, don't force it. It'll come over time. It's preferable that you keep your upper body nice and upright, keep your back straight. You don't want to sacrifice the movement and force anything by compensating through your upper back and leaning over. You want to keep that integrity through your upper back and only go as low as you can. And over time, you'll build up the hip mobility to be able to get deeper into those positions. I've got loads of videos on hip mobility if you want to check them out. I'll put them in the description. But for now, what we're going to do is get into probably the major upper body move of this part of the circuit, which is a full range of motion push-up. So I'm going to grab a couple of rocks, which doesn't really count as equipment in my mind. You can use books or whatever you've got laying around. And the reason why we're doing that is because it allows me to get deeper into the range of motion of this pushing movement. So my chest is basically hitting the ground there. I'm getting deeper than I would have if I didn't have the rocks. And then I'm rounding my back again, pushing my shoulder blades away down towards the ground. And we're strengthening not only the chest, but also the back. So we're working the full range of the motion in this movement. Don't forget to keep your body nice and straight. We want to be engaging the glutes, squeezing the quads, and locking the knees out through this movement. And then we can solidify our strength in that position by taking a quick 5 to 10 second isometric hold right at the end of the movement before we take a little rest. So you might be wondering how many times to do this circuit within a week. Well, in the Hike Strong program, we just use this session once a week initially, and on the other days we're working on other stuff because we don't want to simply repeat the same workout every single day. But even if it is the best workout in the world, repeating one workout day in, day out is not going to give you optimum results. You need a nice, well-rounded program, ticking all the elements off that you need to work on, like strength, endurance, cardiovascular fitness, all the things that we need not only to complete the trip, but to get the most enjoyment out of it as well. So our next movement is just a basic bodyweight lunge, but we're changing it up a little bit. We're going to start with a 3-second pause in the isometric phase, then 3 seconds to do the concentric or the raising phase, and then 3 seconds lowering down. So that means that all in all, it's taking us about 10 seconds to do one single rep. And this really comes back to the principle of time under tension, which is one of the key principles of strength training. So you can imagine you're getting much more benefit out of doing one rep like this than a standard lunge that just takes 2 or 3 seconds, because the muscles are under tension for so much longer. And we're really putting ourselves in difficult positions here and forcing the body to stabilize and engage the muscles that we need to be able to be comfortable and stable and be under control in those positions, which is the number one thing you need to do to prevent injury. So it's kind of a combination of working on mobility, stretching, and isometric strength whilst moving through these really much greater ranges of motion. So if you're not quite able to go as slow as I'm going in this movement, you can change it down to maybe 1 or 2 seconds and build that up over time. Or maybe you're super strong and you're able to hold each phase for 5 seconds. This not only builds strength, but it goes a long way to building your muscular endurance because we're under tension for so much time. Now, doing this kind of training, we're not going to be feeling tired and sore and stiff. If you head into the gym and smash yourself, you're going to be tired and you're going to be run down. You're probably going to lose that motivation, which is so important. So instead, after this session, you should be feeling pretty energized and really ready to take the next step into continuing to develop your strength and your balance and stability that we need in the mountains. Perhaps this program isn't right for everyone, but it is right for you if you're interested in hiking and climbing and mountain sports and you want to get back to basics and really develop a strong foundation and a strong structure in your body that can support you and really mitigate the chances of you getting injured. Perhaps the greatest benefit you can receive from doing this kind of training is that you don't have to worry about how much you're suffering when you're hiking or climbing up the mountain. Being well prepared with a good training program means that you can actually just relax and be present and enjoy being in the mountains with those beautiful views. We're going to get into our final move here, which is, again, stabilizing your mechanical axis. You'll notice that it's very similar to the bird dog, but this is the Hitler's dog. So this is all about stabilizing our torso. We want to keep the shoulders aligned. We want to keep the hips aligned and minimize any rotation through the hips or the shoulders while we're moving both the lower limb and keeping that arm straight up, reaching as far away as you can and keeping the hand at about shoulder height. It's a difficult move. Over time, you'll improve and you'll get better at this. Just really focus on engaging the core and keeping it as solid as possible. So I hope I'm not doing all this work here on my own. If you guys are following along at home, let me know. Put it in a comment section below. Maybe you've done this routine a couple of times by now. Let me know how you're feeling. What is the difference between this kind of training and the stuff that you've done before? So there you go, you've got a great follow along video that you can do anytime, anywhere to get started with bodyweight training. I'd love to tell you that all of my fitness videos are filmed like that out in the mountains, but the reality is I'm a normal person and I live in an apartment, probably just like you. This is where I do most of my training, and it's where I do all of my training with my one-on-one clients. Which, by the way, if you're wondering how this online personal training thing works, you can find out for free. Click the link here and book me in for a free 30-minute consultation where we'll do 3 things. We'll establish a goal, we'll find out what's blocking you and getting in your way, and then we'll get that out of the way. And then the third thing is that we'll get you either a program or some steps forward so that you can start progressing, getting fitter, feeling healthier, and enjoying your time in the mountains. That's all for me, guys. I'll see you on the summit.